How will the World Series impact Juan Soto's free agency? We'll talk about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Well, let's open up the show today by wishing the happiest of birthdays to future Met Juan Soto. Turns 26 years old today, and that is why every team in baseball should be lining up to sign him in free agency, although we know that only a few teams can meet what will be an astronomical asking price. And the two biggest suitors from what everything has been rumored to be up to this point will be his current team, the New York Yankees, and the crosstown rival, the New York Mets. I hope there's Yankee fans that clicked on this show today because they were wondering, will Mets fans be rooting for the Yankees or rooting against the Yankees in this World Series? How does that impact Juan Soto's free agency? And you want to call me a loser as a Mets fan talking about Juan Soto when your team is in the Fall Classic, and you want to say I'm jealous right now? You are absolutely right. I wish the New York Mets were still playing games right now. But the fact is, part of the reason why a Yankees fan might have tuned into the show today is a little bit of fear deep down inside of you. Yeah, you might say, oh, yeah, what am I worried about? We're in the World Series. Why would he ever want to leave? If there was ever a doubt, why are you watching? I think there's a very real chance that Juan Soto signs with the New York Mets this offseason because Steve Cohen pursues Juan Soto the same way he pursued Yoshinobu Yamamoto and maybe even goes a little bit further, and the Yankees aren't willing to meet the asking price. Remember, the Yankees, you could say they finished second for Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Maybe they did. But who had the second highest offer? Who had the offer that the Dodgers just met the asking price on? It was the New York Mets. So if the Mets were to outbid the Yankees again, you never know what could happen. And we're going to talk about this from all angles throughout the offseason, but also on the show today. We're going to start this off, though, focusing in on what Juan Soto wants. How will winning the World Series impact Juan Soto's decision? Does winning the World Series with the Yankees come across to him as mission accomplished? Went to New York, played for the Evil Empire. I played for the team that is most infamous in Major League Baseball, the team that has the most iconic history, and I was able to thrive in my year in pinstripes. I won the World Series, and now I'm open to go to the highest bidder. Is he instead saying, I want to run it back? I love being a Yankee. I had an amazing experience. I won my second World Series. It's just been a dream come true. I want to stay there. I think it could go any which way. Ultimately, I still believe that Scott Boras, free agent, has a chance to set records with this contract, is going to be swayed by money first and foremost. And then if the offers are close enough, he'll pick his preferred destination. And winning a World Series with the New York Yankees, coming off of that experience, you got to think that would make things worse for the New York Mets when it comes to trying to lure Soto away from the Yankees. I think from a player perspective, we're going to talk about the team perspective in the next segment because that's where I think this actually gets way more interesting. But simply from Juan Soto's perspective, I believe the lure to run it back and win again is probably more intriguing than a devastating World Series loss and feeling like you owe something to the Yankees. You have to go back to get the job done. At least that's the way I look at it. Now, what should Mets fans be rooting for? Just pure rooting interest? It's hard for me to say root for the Yankees to win the World Series. As much as the Dodgers are going to be a rival for the New York Mets in the National League for years to come, I believe. I think that might have been the first matchup of many we see between these two franchises moving forward, because I really do believe the best days are ahead for the New York Mets, and the Dodgers are always in the dance. So if the Mets become one of those teams that can be perennially in the playoff mix, they're going to see the Dodgers again, and that rivalry might start to form a little bit more. I don't like the Dodgers at all right now, but what I will say is I'd prefer to see the Dodgers win the World Series to, for one, validate the fact that the Mets lost to the best team running. Also, though, I don't want to see the Yankees win the World Series. I mean, they have 27, and their last one's in 2009. Wouldn't it be great for the Mets to beat them to a World Series next? The Mets were to win in 2025, and the Yankees still haven't won one. All of a sudden, it goes right back to that one tiny sliver of a trump card you might have had as a Mets fan in an argument against the Yankees fan over the past 15 years, which is, who's the last team in New York to be in the World Series? It was the Mets in 2015 prior to this one. Also a fun fact. Do you know that the Yankees last clinched a spot in the World Series? They won the ALCS back in 2009 on October 25th, funny enough. So it was Juan Soto's 11th birthday, which was the last time that the Yankees had punched a ticket in the Fall Classic. They obviously went on to win that World Series, have not been back since. As a Mets fan, when I am watching this series, I will be rooting for the Dodgers. I think that it will in some ways continue to validate the Mets run. If the Yankees run over the Dodgers, it's going to look like, oh man, the Yankees clearly were the best team in baseball and they would have beaten the Mets. If the Dodgers run through the Yankees, then in New York, you can have the debate. If it was a Mets-Yankees World Series, who would have won? Could the Mets have beaten this Yankees team with their upstart, out-of-nowhere, OMG-fueled run with Sean Manaea and Luis Severino going up against his former team? That still would have been an unbelievable World Series. But now it's always going to be a what if. If the Dodgers beat the Yankees, it remains a what if. Who had the better year in 2024? Of course, the Yankees got to the World Series, but if the Yankees lose in 5 games and the Mets took the Dodgers to 6, and the Yankees had to go through a couple teams from the AL Central, granted the Guardians, I think were a very good team. The Royals, they had good pitching, but neither here nor there. Then all of a sudden, the debates this winter can be there. I want to see the Dodgers win the World Series, but what I will say is you can make an argument that if the Yankees win the World Series, that might actually be better for the New York Mets in their pursuit of Juan Soto. And I'm going to explain why in the next segment. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today, where you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 11,000 subscribers by the end of the World Series. We're getting close. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so a year ago, when the Mets and the Yankees both hit free agency and they were looking at the different targets that were available, they keyed in on the same guy, and that was Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Now, personally, I keyed in on 2 targets that the Yankees ended up liking. I did a lot of shows about not just Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I wanted the Mets to trade for Juan Soto. I really did. I said, you know what, just go get him, and then you have the inside track to re-signing him. And who knows what happens? Maybe with Juan Soto, you can win the World Series. Now, in retrospect, better take than you would have thought, because if the Mets add Juan Soto to the team that they have here, who knows what would have happened. But that's also a lot of revisionist history. And I also think that the Mets probably did the right thing, letting this thing play out. Their biggest asset to bring Soto in long term is the Brinks truck, and trading assets to get him for a team that had no guarantees they would even make the playoffs would not have been the wisest thing. The Yankees, on the other hand, saw this year as an opportunity. They have Aaron Judge. They have Garrett Cole. They have been knocking on the door for a while, and they have not come through when it matters most in October. Go get the guy that put you over the top. They did that, and it has worked out. It worked out in remarkable fashion when you consider how they actually did punch their ticket into the World Series with Juan Soto, with that incredible at-bat, hitting the game-winning home run, in extra innings against the Guardians. So now they're here. They're in the World Series. They got Juan Soto in the same lineup with Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, who's been red hot this October, and they're going to look to take this team that has been close for a while and finally get to the mountaintop. Let's say they do get to the mountaintop. All year, there has been that footnote on everything the Yankees do. Well, you only had this 1 year with Juan Soto guaranteed. You only had this 1 year guaranteed, right? If they lose the World Series, well, you better re-sign him, or it was all for nothing. Yeah, you got to the World Series, but getting there is not what the New York Yankees are about. You run the risk of losing Juan Soto and not making it back, and even worse, he goes across town and maybe the Mets all of a sudden become a World Series contender for years to come. That's worst case scenario. So here's where I tell you that it might make sense to root for the New York Yankees, because on the other side of the coin, if the Yankees get the job done and they win title number 28, they hit the market this year, a little bit less pressure to re-sign Juan Soto. Yeah, you'd say, well, keep that core together. You just won it all. But if you're Steinbrenner and you already have Aaron Judge on the books, you already have Cole on the books, you have an opportunity to sign Soto, sure, but you're going to pay $80 million in your outfield to Judge and Soto when you have Jason Dominguez right there ready to go. Spencer Jones also coming up through the pipeline. There's a world where the Yankees win this championship, see where the bidding goes, and say, you know what? We could spend $500 million better on multiple players. I talked about the possibility that Pete Alonso and Juan Soto trade places, and how the Mets could be the team that wins the bidding on Soto, and then instead of paying $40 to $45 million on Soto, they might be able to sign Pete Alonso for $20 to $25 million. And the Yankees might be better off, honestly. Just short term. Long term, of course not. But like short term next year, if they were to have Pete Alonso and have an additional $20 million to spend on their payroll, they might end up, getting the last laugh on all fronts. They might win the World Series. He might go to the Mets, and they might continue to win with their team that they already have in place, which is already good, and being able to allocate all of that money over the next decade into other places. It's possible. So while I would say in some respects, winning the World Series with the Yankees should keep Juan Soto in a Yankees uniform, it would make the most sense. If you're thinking about it from the team perspective, I do believe the pressure of re-signing him actually lessens if you win it all, because that trade, already a win. And if Steinbrenner has a line in the sand on where he's willing to go on his payroll, and they're not willing to meet a certain number or meet a certain amount of years for Juan Soto, and the Mets are willing to push the boundaries, and Steve Cohen is all in to make it very uncomfortable on the Yankees, because he has this one opportunity to sign a 26-year-old superstar who can literally go down as the greatest player in Mets franchise history. I think there's a world where a Yankees team fresh off of a championship is a little less inclined to meet the price. Whereas if they lose the World Series and you get to that doomsday nightmare scenario for them where they got there, but they lost to the Dodgers, and the Mets are the team that's looking to sign him, maybe then they relent a little bit and say, you know what? We got to make sure that we didn't make that trade for nothing. And again, getting to the World Series is great. For a lot of franchises, that might be enough. It's the Yankees. They need to win a World Series with Juan Soto to make it all worth it. That could happen right now. But if it doesn't, I think they might be a little more aggressive spending for Soto. Now, if you're a Yankees fan watching this on the day that they are in the World Series, for one, I mean, you probably have better things to do, don't you? But two, you might not like me very much right now. And you're going to hate me more if you continue to watch Locked On Mets throughout the offseason, because we're going to cover the Juan Soto story, because I truly believe that the New York Mets are going to put a very aggressive offer in front of Soto. They might just get that offer in front of him that he cannot refuse. But here's where I'm really going to rub you wrong. I honestly believe that playing for the New York Mets is a significantly better outcome for Juan Soto's legacy. And that's where we're going to close the show in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, your live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. So you want to throw $5 on the Dodgers to win the World Series? Even if they lose, you're going to win, because you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's over at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right. I made a bold statement going into the break that Juan Soto's legacy long-term is better if he chooses to come play for the New York Mets. And my case is pretty clear here. The New York Yankees have 50 players who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Look at their Hall of Fame outfielders: Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Reggie Jackson, one day Aaron Judge. It's a lot of players with crazy legacies that have done it all in pinstripes. Now you could say, oh, well, you can join that lore. You can join that selective group of all-time great Yankees. And that is a prestigious honor. But you know what's even better? Being the greatest in the history of a franchise. And that ain't happening with the Yankees. What would Juan Soto have to do, or his 13-year deal, adding on, I guess, the 1 year he just served in pinstripes, to surpass the likes of Ruth, of Mantle, of DiMaggio, of Gehrig, of Judge, of Jeter? I mean, what? Multiple MVPs? A little hard to win them when you got Aaron Judge right in your way. Juan Soto had an MVP caliber season this year. Granted, Bobby Witt Jr. probably would have won it over him anyway. But the guy that took away all of his votes is his teammate. Now imagine the other side of town. Juan Soto comes to the New York Mets, a franchise that only has 2 World Series titles to their name, not 27 or potentially 28 in the next 2 weeks. You deliver one World Series legend. Keith Hernandez is an icon for the New York Mets. And you look at what he did in his Mets career. I'm not disparaging it. He was a great Met. But if that's the bar that you have to jump over as a guy that was traded to the Mets to win a World Series, one World Series title and 5 years of Juan Soto like production, and you move above a guy like Keith Hernandez on the all-time list for greatest Mets ever. It's Piazza, it's Keith Hernandez. Those are the only guys with their jersey retired as a Met. Oh, now Strawberry. Sorry. Three position players who have their jersey number retired, and David Wright should join them very soon. But Juan Soto, if he just plays for the back of the baseball card for even 8 years and then has, some down years after at the end of his career, whatever it is, very good chance that he'll go down as the greatest Met in franchise history. He could have a statue outside of the ballpark. You want to be in Monument Park with however many players are out there, or do you want to have a statue next to Seaver outside? Up to you. Which destination gives you a greater chance at an all-time legacy? And if you think it's the Yankees, well, you're probably a Yankees fan, because otherwise I think you're just fooling yourself. Juan Soto can do more to be remembered as the greatest Met ever than he might do just joining a collection of great Yankees. It's not a knock on the Yankees that they've had amazing players forever, but that's a lot harder to compete against when you're talking about your legacy than the New York Mets. And beyond just the legacy play, you also have to wonder, what are the state of these two franchises? The Yankees have always been competitive. They're always a winning team year after year. And so that is the safer route, you would say, to constantly being in the playoffs and having your shot to win World Series titles. But if you think about the owner, which one would you rather play for right now? Who do you think is going to constantly be in the luxury tax surrounding you with superstars? Is it the Yankees or is it the Mets? President of Baseball Operations, not going to knock Cashman. He has a great career, track record. But David Stearns is pretty cutting edge and is widely regarded as one of the brightest minds in baseball. I think if Scott Boras and Juan Soto are in a room and they're talking about the options, and Boras is probably trying to persuade to take more money to go play for the Mets, he's going to run down all the reasons why being a Met is a pretty good thing right now. He's got a lot of clients in the Mets, by the way. I don't think that the Boras-Cohen relationship should go underrated in this whole free agency. Something we'll be talking about all winter. Nimmo, Boras client. Alonso, Boras client. We'll see how that goes. Sean Manaea, Boras client, came to the Mets. Scherzer, Boras client that signed with the Mets. Boras gets pretty chummy with Steve Cohen. You see the video when those two guys get together, because he knows that Steve Cohen is the one owner that he really can work to sign a bunch of his clients. And this is the one. So we'll see how it all plays out. But as you're watching this World Series, ultimately, I don't know if there is an outcome that is bad for the New York Mets. I really don't. Because ultimately, what it's going to come down to more than anything else is how far are the Mets willing to push the offer to convince him to sign. That's really what it comes down to more than anything else. But I do believe wholeheartedly that Juan Soto will have a better legacy if he chooses to sign with the Mets than the Yankees. And I also believe that the Mets as a franchise are no longer a little brother to the Yankees. And hey, they win the World Series this year. Yankees fans can puff their chest, say whatever they want. I like the stock in the New York Mets for the next 10 years. Am I biased? Absolutely. But I think if you took an unbiased arbiter and they were to weigh the owner, the decision maker, the manager, the superstar players, all that stuff. Yeah, Aaron Judge is amazing, but Lindor's not a bad player either. And I think that Juan Soto can do just as much winning with the Mets as he'll do in the future with the Yankees. So I really believe this is something that is real. I think it's something that's coming down the pipeline, but it is something that we will lay out for now that the World Series games are going to start. And we'll let the Yankees have center stage with the Dodgers. We'll talk about other things. But as soon as the World Series ends, you better believe that we're going to get right back to Juan Soto watch, because that is going to be the story of the offseason for the New York Mets. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you who tuned in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. We're not going to have a show tomorrow for the first time since May 12th. Crazy stuff. I'm going to try my best to actually have a night off and enjoy myself, but I will be back with the show on Monday. Thank you all. And also, by the way, thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube, check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything, the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league by Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.